You have written a story about a character who is lustfully, hopelessly obsessed with the embodiment of death. But the question that your story is asking, is revolving around friendship. How, in the 7 pages of your manuscript, are you going to say anything about it? You can't. Your theme is misplaced. Attack on table. Welcome to Attack on Table, where it doesn't matter if Ryan and I are mean to each other because we'll just fix it in post. Ryan, what are we talking about today?
Well, first, Sean, let me introduce our guest that we've invited on here. I don't want to just avoid them like they're not here. We brought back Abigail Morrison. If you guys haven't caught her interview, go to our panel. Wow, our page, and check out the interviews. She's in there.
Everything's going so well.
This is how it is. Yeah, this is how it's going to go. This is our day. And if you guys are, like I said, if you guys want to see Sean and I be a little bit more professional, a little bit more prepared for this stuff, go on to our interview section and watch our interviews. We've got a bunch of them. Season 2 we're in season 2. So today we're talking about theme. I'm sorry. Hello, Abigail. Welcome to the show.
Hi. It's so good to be back. Thank you for having me on again.
You don't have to lie. This has been much more awkward than your first time being on the show, but we're going to get there one way or the other. You actually brought us this topic of conversation and had suggested this one as well as the other episode that you're going to be starring in. So you want to tell everybody real quick a little bit about what exactly it is about theme that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I love talking about theme. It's my favorite thing to teach on. And so I think kind of my big idea about theme is shaped really heavily by Story Grid by Sean Coyne. And so he talks about it as a controlling idea, which is like a proposition set up in relation to like the stakes of your story. So maybe not friendship in your lustful pursuit story, because you're not dealing with, friendship in a love story kind of thing. And so I find that theme is really helpful as a way of filtering what belongs in a story or what isn't. So I think it's a really effective tool to make your writing in your story just like way tighter than it might be if you're just kind of if you don't have one or if it's too vague or broad. So that's why I love talking about it.
And so I think when we were talking earlier, before we got on and started recording, when you mentioned theme, you were talking about like the importance of kind of finding a balance so you're not like pushing a narrative too heavily and to the point to where it becomes kind of unenjoyable for the audience. What do you feel like is the good balance in between there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for me, keeping in mind that theme is a proposition and not an edict. So an easy example is if you have a love story, then your proposition in relation to your stakes, which are going to be like love or hate, could be something like love wins when people are honest about how they feel, versus an edict, which is like tell people how you feel. So when I come to a story, I'm really just exploring the proposition that I've set out And it's not that I necessarily am going to be like, get to the end and everybody in the story figures it out and gets on the right page and everybody's like happily ever after. It's more about setting up a spectrum of different people and like how well they align with that theme or not. So you might have someone who like always tells everybody exactly what they feel and may need to learn a little temperance in like, maybe you don't need to overshare everything, or maybe you can be honest but still be considerate of people's feelings when you deliver what you're talking about. Or maybe you have someone who's really closed off, or maybe you
Yeah.
have someone who like totally gets it. And so that, I think, just using different characters to kind of tease out different elements of that proposition, different facets in that diamond, is a really good way to avoid being really ham-fisted and then just trying to like treat people like people. Like if you have just your like mustache twirling oil baron is like your default bad guy and like he never does anything nice to anybody ever, and then you're like, oh, my theme was oil barons are jerks. like that's just, it's so heavy-handed. So I think just trying to treat people like actual people. Even Boromir plays with hobbits is kind of my thing there. And obviously he's got some issues. So those are just some things that I try to keep in mind. Going in with curiosity is also really helpful. Like, what do I actually think about this? What do I believe about this theme? Really helps me to come into a story with an idea of being able to discover things for myself, as opposed to just like handing down a scroll of rules for people to follow.
Yeah, see, Sean, it is possible to be honest and
no more
think
talking
of
from
other
you.
people's
You've done
feelings.
enough. I wanted to jump in at the end of that to just say, like, I'm really big on theme in my stories, and having something I've always kind of regarded as like being in the background, but just like what you said, to kind of shape what is and isn't appropriate for the story. My favorite way to not come off as preachy or try to make any overarching Ryan-esque statements about, ultimate truth or anything is to really use my theme to ask a question focused around, I guess you would say, events that are in the story itself. Did you like that, Ryan? Don't answer that.
I don't know what you mean by Ryan-esque. I actually have a very subtle approach when it comes to talking about themes and stuff, like, because I don't try to focus on one particular theme when I write, unless it's like a short story, because it's like then I only have so much room. But I like the epic of Hath and Harrow. Like, I like to pepper in a bunch of different stuff. I don't like to draw hard conclusions. I like to kind of just be like, this is what happened to them. Feel how you want to feel about it. You may not know all the facts, because nobody ever does. So it's just like, you just have to feel based on what information I've provided, and then draw your own conclusions.
I would make the argument that Hath and Harrow has its theme, which I don't know how it ends or anything like that, but you have a definitive beginning and end to your book, and that arc that is ultimately followed, and the theme that's attached to that would probably be the main one. You just have little tiny baby themes sprinkled in for little mini arcs that your characters go on. And
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong about like that, with being the single greatest arc that's in a story is going to probably bear the main theme of whatever story somebody creates. Well, nobody's saying that they can't there can't be more. You can't ask other questions. You can't make other statements.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I mean, I think you're wrong, but that's just because I want to state that for the record. But I do agree with you.
I appreciate you. It's the first thing
So
you've
what do
said
you,
today that I liked.
what I don't want to make it personal, as like, so you're like just talking about your own book, but what if some stories you've encountered where you really appreciated like the stance they took, or the approach they took to their theme? Did you really
Sure. Yeah, I think the two examples I use in the workshop that I used to teach on this is Lord of the Rings, which I think just is very straightforward. I like it because Tolkien was very clear of like, this is what this is about. It's about, you know, little everyday people doing the right thing, and that's what wins the day. And I think that bears out. I usually use the movies as an example because that's more manageable for people. But I think it really bears out, and you can see how it influences like all of the different aspects of how those movies were made. And then the other one I like to use is Skyfall, which is my favorite Bond movie. And I like that one because that's one where it's not easy to know like what is the main theme of Skyfall. And so I kind of just had to pick one for when I teach on it. But that's a really good example. I would love to spend more time kind of rewatching it and sussing out how those like sub themes play out, like you were talking about, because the one I use is basically like good wins when people act in good faith to each other to like overcome evil, right? Because you've got a lot of spoilers. It's been out for long enough. So hopefully I'm not ruining this movie for anybody. But it's got a lot of like betrayal between M and Silva and M and Bond, and are they going to, you know, come back together to win the day, that kind of stuff. But you could also look at that movie and look at like what is the role of human spies in a world that's more technologically driven. So like that's a theme. You've got a sub theme related to like him being an aging agent in the field, and is he gonna be, you know, ousted by the newer, younger crop of people. So that one's like really thematically complex. Obviously, he's got like his family issues that he's got with his home. So I think it's really well done, and I think it's very hard to manage multiple themes well. So I salute the people that worked on that. They did a great job.
What about you, Sean?
Well, I would say I was actually just thinking about the two examples that she used, and I guess you would say Tolkien's upfront about his themes and everything, but he just has the characters show you without announcing it. So it's not being, the reader's not getting their nose rubbed in it to the point of it's chafing. But the other one, it still makes you work to kind of really think about it and suss it out to the point where you still have fun sitting and pondering about it. And I feel like that's the two places everybody should live as they come up with the theme or are creating a story around a theme, is that it should be something there that not necessarily that the reader is going to say like, what the hell does this have to do with the theme of the story, but like, ooh, how does this fit? I don't know. Like, I would prefer the theme that you're speaking about from Skyfall over the one in The Lord of the Rings, just because back then you could get away with having good wins when everybody does, plays their part. Even the little folk who don't wear shoes. And
yeah, I'm sorry.
Please continue. No, I'm done. Go.
Oh, great. I get to interrupt you. It's my favorite thing to do. It's my pastime, interrupting Sean. I would say if I was going to pull out some examples, well, the thing that I like the most that I get to see very rarely, Sean and I, like you said, like you were talking about Lord of the Rings in the movies, just because it's more accessible to a lot of people. Sean and I we broaden these conversations beyond just literature, because there's a lot of media out there, and we're talking about stories. We're not talking about just written books. Like, we're talking about any story that's out there being told, because it all stems from words. And so one theme I really like is when I guess I should call it curiosity. Curiosity can be dangerous, and a good example of theme where that kind of comes in, and it kind of defines a lot of arcs, not only in the character, but kind of the progression of the overarching story, which is Full Metal Alchemist. It's an anime, and it's where like this young kid is effectively trying to experiment with this magic system, in order to bring their mother back from the dead, and it goes tragically wrong, and then just kind of spirals all these other problems. And if I were to kind of take that to the same way, but in literature, there's a great little young adult series called it's the Demonata series, and the first book is like Lord Loss, and basically this kid gets introduced to the concept of magic similar to like a Harry Potter situation, and then he effectively summons a demon, a dark lord, and it almost kills him. And so like I love those kinds of themes where it's just like we have this magical thing happening, but it's like your curiosity and your lack of understanding or respect for the danger of that thing can be traumatic if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So I
Full
like
Metal
those
Alchemist
stories.
is such an interesting choice because I think she's both like really good at theme, and then like towards the end it gets a little out of hand. It gets so abstract that there was like stuff at the end of that where I was just like, I'm not really sure I understand. And maybe that's just me being kind of dumb, but that's kind of an interesting one. And I've had people that were like, oh, I actually liked the original versus Brotherhood better because it is like less abstract at the end, even though Brotherhood is like more strict to the manga. So that's a really interesting one to choose. Definitely thematically rich as a series. Also fantastic, great show.
Well, if I could kind of take it back to what you guys were talking about with Tolkien, I think a good measure of theme that we should be discussing in this conversation about theme is, as the creator of the theme, as the author, understanding how your theme works. Understand, like, the thing about Tolkien, and this is something that needs to be understood by a lot of people, not just writers of original work, but people that want to adopt an existing IP and try to retell that story, is understanding the themes that were initially created. Tolkien's theme works so well because of its simplicity. You have good, you have evil, you have people that shift from good to evil because of X thing that's an evil force. It pulls them in that direction. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
I would
don't need
take away the word simplicity and add flexibility. When you're that broad, a lot of things can play with that notion. And I think that there's a spectrum that, from what we were talking about earlier, where good versus evil, or good wins when, good people act, is not all the way on the side of the spectrum of too vague. But it is vague enough to where you can tell that story in all those different little ways, Ryan, and it can still fit comfortably in, as that theme for all those events. So rather than calling it simple, I would say, flexible, malleable.
Well, I use the term simple in context of complexity, not necessarily
You don't have to make excuses. You've used the wrong word before. It's all right.
I didn't use the wrong word this time, so it doesn't matter that much. I'm sticking with simple because I think simple, it works. It's the KISS method. It's keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes simple is best.
I think.
Where do you stand, Abigail?
I think where I would stand is you need a certain amount of specificity in that, like, because Lord of the Rings isn't just like good wins when good people do good stuff, right? It's very specifically like good wins when like the average normal person does the right thing. Because if it were just when good guys do good things, then there's like not really a reason for like Gandalf and Aragorn and an eagle to like just fix it, right? So this is where we get into this like spectrum of characters, right? So you have so I usually, when I do this in my own work, I'll set out like a spectrum that's like, you could say, like, if you're doing a good versus evil, you could have like good and evil on your different sides. And then you kind of lay out the characters along the spectrum, right? So like Boromir's kind of in the center because he's trying to do the right thing, but he's like not really doing it the right way because he's not on board with like let the little people handle it. And then you have like Aragon is like trying to do the right thing, but he has to kind of figure out what his right thing is. So he's like over here, and then like Sam is like way out on like goodest good boy ever land. But if you change the theme in like really subtle ways, it like it radically changes where people fall on this spectrum. Because if you change it to just like when strong people defend the weak, like then Boromir's like way out and goodest good boy, and like Sam and Frodo get knocked to the middle because they're weak and they can't protect anybody. So I think it's not for me, and I think complexity can become problematic if it's so you want to have specificity, but if you have too much complexity in your specificity, then you lose that flexibility like Sean was talking about, because you bring the edges of your spectrum in so tightly that you don't really have any room for anybody to spread out on that spectrum, because they're all really tight in that, good people win, good wins when, cattle farmers from Arkansas, finds the fabled blade like that. That's a terrible theme because it's so complex that it's either like you are either the Arkansas farmer that has found the fabled blade or you're not, and so there's no room for that flexibility. But I think if you leave it too vague, then it starts to lose meaning, because you're not having necessarily the same conversation at the same time, because one guy says good is being strong and protecting weak. One guy says good, being the good guy doing the good thing, is getting your hands dirty. Someone else says it's protecting the little people. So I think you need to have somewhere kind of in the middle to make it mean anything, to make it a useful filter and tool.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to Tolkien, I wouldn't say that the theme equates to good succeeds because good people do things. Right. I would put it more in the vein that darkness is tempting and it's a powerful draw, and good can succeed. It's just going to be very hard, but it is possible. Like it's more of a call to hope than anything, and it's like a hope under duress.
I'd make the argument actually now, after Abigail's explanation and her bestest attempt at trying to tell us we're both right and keep us from fighting, I refuse. It's that even that hope can be found even in unexpected small places.
Is that canon now, Sean? Is Abigail the official den mother of Fitz of Writing?
No.
Is that what's happening?
Denied.
I'm gonna veto that. I don't want the job.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
No. I will not be contained, nor will my hatred for Ryan. So where do you find, and this might be a tough question, but where do you think, you talked earlier about it being ham-fisted, it like beating your readers or your viewers or whatever over the head, your audience, there's the word, over the head with your theme so much that their jaw drops, and then you shove the spoon with the theme into their mouths and it hurts and it doesn't taste good? Where's that line where you cross into you're doing that and your theme is more of a hindrance than a help?
I think for me, the line is when you are writing a story to make a point, rather than writing a story to like write a story, or to explore an idea. I think we see that a lot in like modern media, and I will pick a fight with Disney on this in particular, where they can just be so like if you don't believe this, you're a bad person is like sometimes the vibe in a story. Or like you're stupid if you disagree with what I have to say, which is, I will also take a shot at Alan Moore and he'll never find out, and that's fine. I don't really want to find out, but
we're
like,
gonna send this directly to him.
I mean, but he also, like, in an introduction to, I think it was the introduction to V for Vendetta, maybe, and he was basically like, I'm in a pub and some loser is asking to turn off the TV because it's got the news, and if you don't think my work is amazing and agree that like people are awful, then you're the kind of person that turns off the news. And I was like, sir, sir, like,
I remember he was being interviewed about The Watchmen, and he said that if you like the character Rorschach, you're a bad person.
Right.
And it's like, well,
and it was like, it's not my fault.
Okay.
The world we live in is so tragically a dumpster fire that I have to agree with the person.
Yeah,
like
I just
Rorschach.
liked the cloth he put over his face, and I thought it was a real, like, just badass when he said, and I'll whisper no. I don't agree with everything that he says or whatever, but I liked him, geez. And apparently I can't ever sit down and have a beer with Alan Moore.
Well, if it would be very wild if I ever got into that situation, but so I got some things to say to that guy.
I love to turn off the news.
I turn the shit off of the news.
I don't watch a lot of news, but
I like to be
that's not my
happy.
main intention with him. But I mean, I hope he can be happy and well someday. I don't think he will, but I hope that.
Abigail Morrison's opinions of Alan Moore's mental health are not that of Fitz of Writings.
I mean, this is buddy. This is hurting you.
All right, I put my disclaimer in there.
But,
would you say that it's like at the point where the theme and the theme or the point you're trying to make with your story overtakes the story itself, the ability to enjoy the story, when you're really trying to drive it home that hard? Because I feel like I was trying to think while you were talking of what kinds of media where like the point that they're trying to make is more important than the story that they're telling, and the only thing I could come up with was satire, which everything is meant to illustrate that. And there's a lot of people like Disney who should probably hear that, because their themes are I agree, have been a little garbage lately, and they could calm down because they're coming off like satire.
Yeah, I feel like the line gets crossed pretty hard when like an average person would just go, ugh. You know, anytime they encounter your theme, they're just like, ugh, God, like, again, still we're really honing in on it, aren't we? You know, I think you've overdone it way too much. Then you probably need to dial it back about 50% at that point.
And it should be.
I think also. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
You're the guest.
I was also going to say, I think when you're, not only when the theme becomes like the point of what you're trying to do is like forcing people to believe something, but also when it starts to modify the character's actions in ways that feel really unnatural. So Ryan and I talked about this last time, where it was like this book that was trying to be like, I'm a tough girl boss and I hate men. And I was like, you were raised by like the most badass warden lady in the universe, in like a world where like there wasn't really a lot of, it didn't seem very like sexist to me. And I was like, so why is it like, it felt really forced that she was like so angry at like a certain group of people. And I think that's can be a problem, where it's just like unnatural how people are acting to like prove your point. Or like a good example would be like in certain like Christian fiction, when like everything turns out like well in the end and everybody has their come to Jesus moment and is like figures it out, and it's like life is just more complicated than that. So I think, you know, in stories that are really flat, where like all of the good guys come out perfectly okay and all of the bad guys get like totally punished and run into the ground, because you're trying to like force, you know, punishments on people, or rewards. I think that can be an issue too, where it's just like,
I agree with you in regards to like those things that kind of feel out of place a little bit. I don't know if it's always like intentional. I feel like sometimes it's like a concept that feels good on paper, but it's like not really. I mean, I guess like everyone has their opinions, right? So it's like I'm not a fan of I forget what that thing that came out. It's like the Handmaid's Tale or what have you.
No.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with the storytelling or necessarily the theme. I just don't buy into the logic of the world because
Is that
to
an
me,
issue
it's
with
just
the
like-
theme though, or is that an issue with the writing?
No, it's kind of an issue of the theme because the theme they're trying to talk about just it logically doesn't make sense. Right? Like if we had a society where the only part of us that can produce is severely limited, I'm of the mindset that would quickly become a matriarchal society. Out of necessity for survival for the human race.
I don't know. We are a bunch of
Instead
dumb
of us-
anxiety, stupid, dumb apes. Somehow,
well, I
like,
mean,
we're
that's-
like huskies. We're dumb, but dangerously smart. And
I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to that, but I have seen Mad Max Fury Road, and I mean, they were pretty closely guarded and did not become matriarchal society in there, so.
In
stressful times, people have generally humans will try to control and have control over the thing that is rare and valuable. So that part of it doesn't mess with me, but I think that that's more like trying to communicate the theme than the theme itself. So
I'm
stay
still
on
trying
track.
to wrap my head around the comparison of Bates Tale and Max. Yeah, again, I don't think it's necessarily bad writing or anything like that. It was just that's in regards to theme, like that's something that was hard for me to buy into. And I'm sure clearly there was a lot of people that disagree with me because it was successful in its ventures. But yeah, for me personally, it's just not a story I could buy into.
I think that though, like the nope. After you.
Oh,
You're the
okay.
guest. You get
Sorry,
privilege.
Sean.
No,
Keep
it's
doing
okay.
I think a story that feels similar to me to your experience with Handmaid's Tale, just to keep throwing random comparisons in there, is Divergent, which was like a really popular one, and that was in like the grand tradition of like why dystopian novels is like very theme heavy, but they were basically like, oh, we have a society where like 4 things are of value and absolutely nothing else, and if you like one value you think the others are stupid. And I was just like, I mean, I feel like I can value courage and like intelligence at the same time, and they're like, no, mutually exclusive. So I think that's an example where the theme felt a little mishandled to me because it was leaning so heavily into the concept that it started to feel a little forced or illogical in like a world setting. So I think you could definitely.
I do really
definitely
like that example.
Yeah. Where on paper, we're talking about books. On paper, like it's a good concept, but like in execution, it can start breaking human logic. Where you're just like, well, people aren't like that.
But yeah, so I do agree though, to go back to the whole thing about theme and where it gets, too heavy-handed. We have a few minutes to talk about whether or not your theme fits the story you're writing too. Which just to briefly touch on it, we were talking about like themes from, let's say, that are heavy-handed topic or heavily used topics of conversation today being in your 1000 AD Germanic feudal society fantasy story don't really belong. You got to be really careful with how you would handle expressing that theme in those stories and getting it across without almost shaking the story so loose that nobody can really follow what's going on anymore.
Yeah, I would say a subtle nod would probably be the best approach in those
Right.
kinds of things.
Like if you're anti-capitalist, nobody in medieval Europe cares.
I see.
Or, you know, because it was all kings, queens, knights, and things like that. Just for a very vague example.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if I can, I would
Yeah.
like to actually go back to one that I was thinking of earlier when Ryan was talking about taking over IPs. And I think a really good example there is Star Wars, where the original trilogy was very like, anyone can be a hero and use the Force, and like it's accessible to everyone. And then they were like, or you're born with midichlorians and you're the chosen one because you're born with it. And so I think that was an example where people had beef. I mean, for many reasons, for many reasons, had beef with the later movies. But I think that's an example of like, is there that consistency there in theme throughout like a series? And if you're just changing gears from like, this is a story where anyone can find a magic spell book versus you were born as the chosen hero, like that really shifts a lot in your story and can cause a lot of friction for people. So
I've actually bounced back and forth on that that particular example you gave, just because there's like I'm going to say this and I'm going to offend so many fans of George Lucas, but there is a strangely stupid explanation for something that he clearly came up with after the fact. And that is like the time in which he talks about that is in the prequels, which is like before the time in which Obi-Wan is talking about it in a more loose sense. And so it's like, well, that was knowledge that was known back then, but because, you know, the Jedi are essentially non-existent now it's just more of like a spiritual thing and everything's connected. And it's like, I guess that kind of explains it, but it it is jarring for us all to be in this like kind of kumbaya state of understanding of the Force. And then we learn, well, it's just a bacteria, really. It's a special bacteria.
It's weird to be like, oh, this is like a genetics thing or a blood type, and then be like, anybody can use type A blood if you believe in it. It's really weird.
We're all O-type, technically. But I think we've kind of talked this into the dirt. Maybe we'll have more things to talk about, and you know, bring Abigail back on to talk about this particular thing, or find another guest that's willing to bend our ears about it. In regards to theme, Abigail, you wrote a book. I assume there's theme in that.
Yeah, I did.
You want to tell us about that before we go?
I wrote two of them. So Yokni's Eye, which I had attempted to talk about earlier and totally botched it. Sean will fix it in post. And then Downfall is my new one. This is like a game worn book that my dad is reading because I'm at my parents' house because they have better air conditioning. So we have the proof copy here. But yeah, they're both available on my website, amorrisonbooks.com/books, or major retailers, and they're pretty good.
Thank you.
And I have it on good authority. If you buy Abigail's book, she will send you a free one.
That's I don't know about that. But it does come with, if you buy directly from me, it does come with a free sticker, and you can get more stickers if you want, which is
that's what I meant. A free sticker, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Trouble winking.
Ryan, something's happening to your face.
Oh no. Okay, we're all right. Well, if you guys like the show, you want to support us, and you want to support Abigail, go to her stuff, buy her books, like and comment, and subscribe.
And subscribe.
Yeah, you said it. Right. Hey, Sean, quick question.
What do you got?
How do we end these?
Thematically, of course.